Hello, welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm your host, Raymond Bakari, and today I'm joined by the Congressman for Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District, Congressman Jim Langevin. Congressman Langevin, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Raymond?
I'm doing great, and thank you once again for coming on the show. It's an honor to have you on. Just diving right into it, I want to start off by focusing on a big topic in the world of politics right now, which is the fairness in our country's elections. There were a lot of legal challenges from the Trump campaign about alleged voter fraud and attempted to take their lawsuits all the way up to the Supreme Court. Before you were a member of Congress, one of your previous jobs was Secretary of State here in the great state of Rhode Island. Based on your past experience in that position, what is your reaction / thoughts on the recent buzz about the fairness and integrity of our country's elections?
Well, I'll quote the recent former director now of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency when he said that these are the most secure elections in U.S. history. I agree with that statement. And I know that there was incredible collaboration between government and the federal government and the state and local election officials, and that's across the country. There's always room for improvement, but on balance, I believe that the elections were conducted fairly and securely, and we had an accurate turnout result that they gave us the final election votes that as they've been settled. So this has been a fair elections process, and I stand behind the results.
And speaking of the fairness in our country's elections, in Iowa's 2nd Congressional District, the Republican Marionette Miller Meeks won by 6 votes in one of the closest congressional elections in the history of our country. After the multiple recounts and the state of Iowa themselves certifying that the Republican candidate Marionette Miller Meeks won, the Democratic candidate for that seat, Rita Hart, challenged this result, and it's making its way to the House of Representatives where they could potentially decide that seat's fate. It has been pointed out by Democrats that the Democrats lead the House currently, and this would certainly make it easier for Rita Hart to possibly be awarded that seat through this loophole. Democrats have been mad at President Trump and the Republicans for challenging election results in a number of states, but the fact that those same Democrats possibly seem to be okay with this decision for the Iowa 2nd Congressional District to be awarded in this way seems like a double standard according to some. Does this seem like a double standard to you? And if this gets decided in a full House floor vote, will you or will you not vote to have the seat awarded to the winner that the state of Iowa themselves certified, and why or why not?
Every person should want the election results, the votes, to speak for themselves, and that let the winner be declared according to who got the majority of votes. Let the chips fall where they may. Now, if there are voting irregularities and anyone can actually prove or show that votes were counted that shouldn't have been counted, then they need to produce that evidence. And whether it's President Trump or whether it's a Democratic candidate, let the chips fall where they may. On balance, there has been no widespread voter fraud at the federal level in the presidential election, according to multiple sources from Democratic and Republican secretaries of state, all the way up to including the current U.S. Attorney General. So I would say let the results speak for themselves. Again, if there's voting inaccuracies, then people should be able to make their case. I have no problem with someone making their case, having their day in court, but they better have evidence to prove it, and whether it's a Democratic or Republican candidate.
So based on the current situation right now, if today were to be the day, if they were voting to decide to either award the seat to the winner that the state of Iowa themselves certified, which is Marionette Miller Meeks, or the Democrat Rita Hart, who lost by 6 votes, who would you vote for to award the seat?
I don't know the facts in the case. This is not a case that I've been following closely. So if it's something that would be presented to me like anything, I would gather information and listen to what the case is before me, what the evidence is, and have to make a decision based on facts and not just innuendo or press stories.
So currently, right now, you can't make a decision on if you're going to vote?
I can't. I'm not at all familiar with the facts in this particular case.
Okay. Well, while we're still on the topic of the results of the election, in the United States House of Representatives, the Republicans made unexpected yet impressive gains in the House elections. After the 117th Congress starts, the Republicans will be within striking distance of a House majority. What did you personally take away from those House results, the House election results?
Yeah, that was surprising that the Democrats did not pick up. We didn't pick up more seats in the House of Representatives. That's what the polls had indicated. That's what we believed was going to happen, and it didn't. Clearly, there's a disconnect between our message and what is resonating with voters. And as a Democratic caucus, we are going to have to relook at what went right, what went wrong. We had, the first major goal was to defeat Donald Trump and see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be elected president, vice president of the United States. So that did happen. That worked. That was good. But Democrats, we did not, as a party, did not pick up seats in the House. And that should be a wake-up call that there's a dissatisfied electorate out there. It happened even here in Rhode Island. Donald Trump won several communities in what is considered to be a relatively strong blue state. And yet he had significant wins in many communities throughout Rhode Island. And it says something that that people may not be happy with the message that the Democratic caucus was conveying, and we need to relook at that. I think part of it perhaps was that there were arguments on the other side, that on the Republican side, that defined our party and our message and our positions that were not accurate. The two of the biggest ones that seemed to resonate, that Democrats were painted with, that I soundly reject, is the socialism argument. I do not support socialism. I reject socialism. I believe in a market-driven economy, and that's the way I do vote and will continue to vote. I believe that everybody should be able to achieve the American dream and pave their own path to success, and I soundly reject socialism. Also, an issue of defunding the police. I do not support defunding the police at all, by any stretch of the imagination. I think that it's appropriate to look at budgets and have states and municipalities look at what we're spending and where we're spending our dollars in law enforcement, and where we could perhaps also spend additional dollars in things like crisis intervention counselors, mental health counselors that might be even more effective in responding to a crisis scene, or at least having those counselors on hand with police, and would that be more helpful and effective than just a police response? I think it's appropriate to have those conversations, but it has to be, the community has to have buy-in on where we're spending our dollars, what the appropriate response would be. And like in any neighborhood, like any family, you come up with a solution that benefits the entire family. We need to do that as a community when it comes to law enforcement and responses.
Given the result, now the majority for the House is within striking distance for the GOP, and the possibility is possible for the Republicans to keep the Senate if both of the Georgia runoff elections go in their favor. Are there any issues which could end up promoting bipartisanship for President Biden's first 2 years before the 2022 midterms? Are there any issues that you will reach across the aisle to work on with your Republican colleagues, and if so, what are some of them?
Sure. First of all, I pride myself on being one of the most bipartisan members of the Congress. On every major issue that I'm working on, I can point to a Republican colleague or colleagues that I'm working on. Certainly on my issues that I deal with on national security, sitting as both the senior member of the House Armed Services Committee and the senior member of the Homeland Security Committee, especially on the issue of cybersecurity. We've had several major wins in this year's passage of the National Defense Authorization Act that oversees and approves of all the operations of the Pentagon. And we had over 27 bipartisan proposals that were included in the National Defense Authorization Act, many of which I champion. I'm also a strong advocate for career and technical education and make sure that young people have the skills needed to do the in-demand jobs that society needs right now. That's anything from IT to cyber to culinary and construction to advanced manufacturing. So I have a Republican colleague, and G.T. Thompson, Glenn Thompson from Pennsylvania. He and I co-chair the Career and Technical Education Caucus together, and I'll continue to work with him and other colleagues on that important issue. Bipartisan disabilities issues is another one that I'm proud to work with colleagues on as well.
So the main issue you'll focus on to work with for reaching across the aisle will be cybersecurity, like along those issues?
Cybersecurity, national security, career and technical education, disabilities, and healthcare, where there's healthcare affects everyone. I was the one that introduced the first ever in the history of the Congress a bipartisan universal healthcare bill. This was several years ago. It was before the Affordable Care Act was taken up and passed, but I believe it laid the groundwork for the Affordable Care Act. But it was a major piece of legislation that would have improved healthcare, and I actually like it. What I did in my bill better than the Affordable Care Act, but that's not what got taken up. So we have the Affordable Care Act now, but I worked on a bipartisan way on healthcare before, and I'll continue to do so.
And I just want to go back to one of the things that you'd mentioned in my previous question, the one before, what issues you work on. You mentioned how you're not in favor of defunding the police, which is actually a big issue among the Democratic Party right now, which is showing the increased factionalization in the party. The defund the police slogan has also been cited by some political pundits as one of the reasons why the Democrats didn't do as well down ballot in the swing districts that are in mainly suburban areas that went Republican in 2016, flipped blue in 2018, but now flipped back red in 2020. President-elect Biden has even said in a leaked audio recording about the impact of that slogan, while certain progressive members and the progressive Democratic members of Congress, like Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, has doubled down, saying that it isn't just a slogan, but a policy demand. What are your thoughts on the political ramifications of the defund the police movement / slogan? And do you agree that it should be focused on more, or do you agree or disagree that it should be focused on more in the ways that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has pushed for?
I do not support defunding the police. Period. Full stop. Now, there are many different views in our caucus who think differently on different topics. Some on the far left, some on the far right. I'm more of a centrist. And I believe that you've got to find common sense solutions. You've got to reach out across the aisle. We've got to work together, find common ground. Again, we have a party with diverse viewpoints, but it's been unfortunate that the Republican Party and many of our Republican colleagues have seized on the views of a far left part of our group within our caucus and say that's what defines the entire Democratic caucus. It should not, it does not, and we have to make sure that we work hard to get that message out, that we support our police, and we want to make sure that we have common sense community solutions. But I do not support defunding the police.
And aside from defunding the police, another policy a lot of the Democrats, and including President-elect Biden, want to do with once the new Congress is sworn in and President-elect Biden is sworn in January, is they want to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. What's your stance on whether or not the federal minimum wage should be raised to $15 an hour?
Yeah, it should be raised to $15 an hour. We can get there over time, or we do it all at once. Whatever, we have to again work in a bipartisan way to get there. But right now, you have to earn more than twice the minimum wage for someone to afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment right here in Rhode Island. No one should be working a 40-hour work week and living below the federal the poverty line. That's just wrong. We need to work harder toward fixing that, addressing that social inequity. And I believe that moving toward a $15 an hour, getting to a $15 an hour wage is the right way to do that.
And it's argued that this would end up hurting small businesses because small businesses struggling right now would have to pay more to their employees. And critics would also say that if the minimum wage were to be raised, then companies would just simply raise the prices of their products because they would recognize that people have more expendable income, which would basically cancel out the growth of wages, is what critics say. What is your response to these arguments used when speaking against the idea of raising the minimum wage? And do you feel that small businesses would be hurt in any way, shape, or form if the minimum wage were to be raised?
Yeah, and I've heard that argument. It certainly is a valid argument to consider, in that how do we get there? That's perhaps why we do it gradually over a few years, so it's not a shock to small businesses all at once. But we have to recognize that, yes, if we're going to get to a $15 an hour wage, that prices in some ways will go up. We're all going to have to pay a bit more for products and services that we use and that we buy every day. But people can't survive on a minimum wage that is below $10 an hour right now. And even though Rhode Island has done better, we're getting to rapidly getting close to a $15 an hour minimum wage. The federal minimum wage is not adequate, and we need to figure out a way through, whether maybe it's the tax code, and we help small businesses especially to absorb that extra cost. There are ways that we can creatively handle allowing the minimum wage to rise to $15 an hour and not putting too much of a burden on small businesses. We can do that through the tax code or other mechanisms that helps.
Okay, and we are running short on time, so I'm going to skip a couple questions and get towards the end here. One of the big things that the voters look at towards Congress nowadays and their view towards it is the passing of term limits. A lot more people are in favor of term limits now than ever before. Are you in favor or opposed to term limits for members of Congress, and why or why not?
Yeah. So we have term limits already every 2 years. When the voters go to the polls, as members of Congress on the House, we have to get rehired and go before the voters and ask to be reelected every 2 years. And people can make a change at any time, and sometimes they do. On the Senate side, it's every 6 years. For a governor or an executive branch here in Rhode Island, it's every 4 years. So that would be my answer. I'm certainly open to the idea of considering, how do we have a more fair and balanced system that is reflective of the voters' views. But right now, voters have the option to change who represents them every 2 years. I don't consider the seat that I hold my seat. It's not my seat. It belongs to the people of the state of Rhode Island. I'm a temporary holder of this office on their behalf, and they have the right to change representatives at any time. And every 2 years, I said I've had to go before them each year that I've been their representative and ask for their support, be rehired once again.
So do you think there should be a set limit of terms for how many members of Congress can serve? Like, say, for example, like 3 terms would be the max for a House representative and like 2 terms would be for a senator. Are you in favor of a proposal like that?
Not off the bat in terms of right now, again, we have term limits every 2 years. If you're going to do something, it'd have to be something holistic, because certainly it wouldn't be a good idea for Rhode Island to do that and rest of the country not do that, because we have a seniority system. It's what members, the longer they stay, they rise in seniority, and they grow in experience, knowledge, and influence, and you eventually become a committee chair, a subcommittee chair. Like I am a subcommittee chair right now in the House Armed Services Committee. So seniority does have its benefits under the current construct. But if you're going to change that, you want to look at it holistically.
Well, I just have 2 last questions for what I reserve as the icebreaker portion, where we take a step away from the political issues. One of my last 2 questions is, I noticed when preparing for this interview that you attended Rick and you graduated from Rick. That's currently where I attend. And I just want to know, can you tell me what your time was like at Rhode Island College and what you missed the most about it?
I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Rhode Island College. We had a meaningful experience there, great academic programs, and I really excelled in the extracurricular activities I was involved with. For example, when I was involved with student parliament at Rhode Island College, and started off as a freshman representative to student parliament, and then later became vice president and then president of the parliament. So it was exciting to be there, and enjoyed that, but also interaction with professors, really quality education, the quality of the professors there. I put Rhode Island College up against any academic institution in the country. Again, both the quality of the professors and the education I received.
It certainly is a great school, and I'm glad to attend there myself. My final question for this interview, to keep tradition on the show, is one I ask everyone who has involvement with Rhode Island, is, in your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
So many things, but I definitely think our quality of life, the great people that reside in our state, some of the hardest working people that I've ever had the privilege of meeting. It's like a big neighborhood. It is a welcoming place to be. Nobody rallies around people in times of crisis better than the people of Rhode Island. But we're also known for our great seafood, our great beaches, and you can't beat a Rhode Island summer.
Certainly. I basically call this the I know a guy state, because it seems like everybody knows everyone here in this great state. Thank you once again for coming on the show, Congressman Langevin. It was an honor of mine and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Raymond. Great to be with you too.
No problem. Thank you once again for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. I'm your host, Raymond Bakari. I'll see you on the next episode.